There you go. Well, thanks very much, everyone. You are now participating in another Meet the Gurus. As many of you know, it's a process and a podcast dedicated to technology and business and entrepreneurship and how these have converged fairly powerfully in the past several years and spreading ideas, knowledge, and insights in fairly short form. And today we have the pleasure of having Yuri Grigoriev. Yuri, welcome.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here and to talk about something that's near and dear to your heart: Lean, Six Sigma, Agile, and process improvement inside organizations. Yeah. So tell us a little about yourself. I always love starting with something personal. What you how you got into the field you're in, how you what your passions are, and let's start with that.
Yeah. Well, I have had a very diverse career. So I started as a mechanic back then in the Soviet Union. So and then held different roles throughout my career. At worked with NGOs, had a very small manufacturing enterprise, and at some point I joined a major energy company. So I worked as a admin support supervisor. And then I heard about Lean Sigma. It was this weird, funny word. So, and actually, when I learned a little bit more about it, immediately started. I took initiative. I wanted to join this movement, and the thing it fit my ambition and my character very much because it's fun. Really, it's fun thing. It's very diverse. So, like one day you would be working on a streamlining supply chain. The next day you would work with process engineers looking at some factors contributing to undesired effects in gas processing, whatever it is. So it's never boring and always challenging. So every day, this
And
is very good.
and so you've had experiences from, yeah, as you said, kind of a startup and a small manufacturing to a huge company. And you've seen presumably the value proposition and the enhancements that Lean and Six Sigma. But before we get into that, let's talk about what is Lean, what is Six Sigma, and how do they work together or not.
Yeah, as I said, Lean Six Sigma is funny word. So, and most people get baffled and kind of what it is all about because there's no clue in the wording, right? Usually some, like if you say design thinking, at least people recognize the words, right? Lean Six Sigma, it's very unrecognizable. Actually, it's two methodologies put together. Lean, comes from lean manufacturing, about removing wastes and streamline your process. And it was separate methodology. And then Six Sigma, which is more about reducing variation, excessive variation, to put it correctly. So, and there, somebody found synergy. At one point, they were competing, which is bad, and somebody found that it's very synergetic to each other.
Yeah.
So you streamline your process, and then whatever is when it's as much streamlined as possible, you work on the value adding steps to make the variation very low, which makes their defect rate very low accordingly.
Yeah,
So
and we talked about that just before we started. Sigma, if for anyone who's been involved in statistics, is a standard deviation, and Six Sigma is six standard deviations, obviously. And so I was just looking online, and I thought this would be relevant so that people get sort of put it in context to really understand what this is all about. I did some math, and I sort of figured, okay, how many hours are in a year? 8,760. And if you were three sigma, not Six Sigma, three sigma, you would be 99.7%, which sounds really great, but if you do the math on that, take 0.3% multiplied by 8,760, you get 26 hours. So how many of us would feel fine if Amazon were down for just one day, right? So the Six Sigma methodology really strives for perfection, as close to perfection as can be possible. Is that right?
well, it depends. So it
Right.
depends on the domain.
Yep.
So Six Sigma is just coined by I think Motorola. It's a target just as excellence, I would say, in quality, because like 3 defects per million opportunities, which is very low.
Very low.
But we have to apply to our industry, really. So it's what we say usually, it's not at any cost.
Right.
So some applications you would be fine with 1.5 sigma, for instance, because your tolerance to defect is not, I mean, you don't lose too much.
Right.
Right. So you don't want to invest too much money because your defect rate and the cost of your defect because of your industry is not very high. So you can rework them or even scrap. It's not too bad.
Mm-hmm.
But for some industries, like let's say aeronautics, right, and space,
Right.
whatever, shuttles.
Right.
I mean, of course they can tolerate defects. So
Right.
they may need 7 sigma. So they
Right.
need to strive to that objective.
Right.
But
And
if
there's
you
a
are
cost.
woodcutting,
And there's a cost
Yeah.
associated with that, right? So you have to balance as an organization, particularly if you have many projects and many different divisions and many different
Absolutely.
units. So that's a very important point. I mean, I think you just put your finger on it. It's like at what cost, to what value, right? To what end in mind, and that what in that context, what makes it work and what makes it not work in your experience? And you've seen obviously things that have gone awry and off the rails, as they say, and things that have gone perfectly. And what makes it work? When you see an organization that is implementing process improvement well, what do you see? I guess.
Okay, let me first kind of stratify in 2 levels. So first at project level and a micro level, let's call it micro level. So why it works? So one of the best probably definitions of Lean Sigma, so that's structured application of quality and statistical tools to gain process knowledge and make process outputs safer, better, and faster, and low cost. So simple as that. But let me kind of dissect a little bit so to make it more understandable. Structured application of quality and statistical tools. So there's kind of phased approach. So it basically, Lean Sigma gives you a guideline. So where you start and how you proceed. So it's not like you're trying to juggle their tools. So you know how to apply them, at what point. So what you know, each phase dictates some actions, some objectives, basically. So it's structured part. It has, of course, a lot of tools, and actually Lean Sigma it never invented tools. So it took tools from statistics, it took the tools from quality, and borrowed from any possible invention from the knowledge through the pool of knowledge exists. So it's using all kind of tools. Gain process knowledge. This is a very important part of Lean Sigma. So it's structured, and it's this structure and the statistical and quality tools help you to gain process knowledge. And this is very interesting part, I would say, because we would think we all work, we all part of any kind of process, right? So process anything. So people sometimes ask what process you're talking about. Whatever has more than one step is a process. So to make an omelet, you use a process, right? You have to do something like open your fridge and take your eggs, whatever you do after that, right? So it's a process. So of course, the bigger their companies, the more processes they have. And the funny thing, people don't know their processes is a fact of life. So I know it for sure because so many times when we start the project and we have people together, we want to map the current state map, what they call it. They start arguing. Well, now I like it because when we start arguing, I know that we are working. People don't know their processes. They're just fact of life. They think they know, but they don't. And so when you gain the process knowledge, it's a real, some people use the form profound knowledge, not just knowledge, profound knowledge. You know exactly what's going on.
It's the stressing it's putting the stress on the system that tells you whether there is a process and whether it's like people. I always joke when I say, some people it's they're this way, some people this way, some people this way, and you find out the result was the same, but it was done in very different ways.
Exactly, even in small. So it was a myth to start. I mean, and I read about it. Lean Sigma is mostly for the large companies, and actually, Tengizha, the company I worked for, is the largest company in Kazakhstan. Mm-hmm. It's a monster. It's a huge one. Mm-hmm. So when I left the company last year, I started working with smaller companies, much smaller companies. Well, I learned it works, even for very, very tiny companies. Mm-hmm. So like literally few people, and still just human nature. I was surprised that
Right.
People like owners of the company, so there are very few people, staff in the company.
Right.
And there's still something in our nature that we don't realize how convoluted our processes are.
Right.
And it kind of bulbs, they kind of really bulbs, they show up in there and they surprise. Wow, we didn't notice that. We didn't think about it before.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes people
Anyway.
are saying, some people are saying that we don't have time to be
Exactly.
efficient, but in fact you're wasting time by not being efficient. And as someone who's been an entrepreneur for many years, you always keep thinking, I got to keep moving, I got to keep moving. Well, maybe take a step back, think about it for a little
Absolutely.
while, get some insight from someone outside who's taking a different view. So at a micro level, you're talking about both the micro level, and you were then going to talk at the macro level, kind of at the program level.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's what it makes it work. So you have basically what happens, why it works. So you have subject matter experts. You get them committed. So you have identified your process you want to fix. You get them together. You commit them to their objective of the project, which already is a beauty in itself, because people in simple and real, as you said, to the point, Paul. In real life, you just work. You have to keep going, right? And so you don't get the step back to look at the process. And here's even the very fact that what you do is get the experts together, say, here's the objective, let's fix it. It's in itself is 50% of success in itself. And the other thing was, again, as we said, is structural approach. It's not just get together people and get them committed to the task and to the results. They worked, there's a framework, there's a methodology, there are tools available for them. So it's a powerful combination itself. It's a data-driven, what we like to say in Lean Sigma. It's a data-driven approach, scientific methods.
My experience is that there are a lot of organizations that, they get buy-in at the top level, and then there's everyone says we're lean, and actually I've had many a story that I could tell about. People think, I'm not an expert in lean, of course, or Six Sigma, but I've seen organizations think their ship is going in one direction, and the executives think, and in fact the ship is not even going close to that direction because it's not been, you used the word before when we spoke, translated, or translators. People don't translate that into reality. I mean, isn't exactly. That? It's like, it's a great theory, but will it work? The executives think it's working, but there's nothing that is evidence throughout the ranks.
Yeah, exactly. So, in a sense, at the project level, at micro level, it's easy to make it work. And in many organizations, I don't know most. I didn't run the statistics, but what I've witnessed, I've seen that they can share a lot of success stories at the micro level. But at the program level, as you said, it's not the case. And to me, the main factor is, inconsistency. It's inconsistency. So actually, I ran into a very interesting article about, actually, it's Harvard Business Review, an article on data science and art of persuasion. It talks about a huge gap between data scientists and executives. And this undermines value which could be achieved through data science. I kind of was thinking it's not only about data science. It was about Lean and Six Sigma and Agile, anything else. So there's a really huge gap between executives and their scientific methods or methodologies or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's natural. It's natural. I mean, you can't catch up. I mean, executives are people, right? And they're gonna, at strategic level, they never have time to catch up and understand, but at the deep level, at profound level, right? And so this inconsistently turns even good methodologies into management fads and buzzwords, and which in turn triggers rebranding exercises.
Right.
So they just, it was Lean Sigma department, let's turn it to an Agile department, and data science department will be a separate thing for some reason, and they'll never talk to each other. Mm-hmm. So, something like that.
How does when you get involved with an organization, and obviously you've done a lot of this throughout the world in terms of consulting, in terms of hands-on work with clients, there's people going to show you the money. It's like Jerry Maguire, show me the money. So there's the show me the money people, but there's also things that change in organizations. It's just not about the money, right? It's about, did the organization produce, I mean, let's say the organization didn't save any money, but the process improved. I mean, where is the balancing between money saving, because everyone's always concerned about that, and client satisfaction or process improvement or organizational capabilities?
Yeah, this is another probably one of the most important, I mean, one of the most dangerous factors for the success of deployment Lean Sigma or any other performance improvement things. How do you measure success? So, because if you don't measure success, it's hard to maintain, right? You can't, nobody's interested in building something that doesn't work. And how do you know if it works if you don't measure it, right? So, and there's generally overemphasis on money. So you want, okay, Lean Sigma, as you said, show me money. Yeah, right. So at the end of the project, show me money, show me money. And some projects do bring money. We call them in our jargon hard benefits. So yeah, like you want to move the rig from one point A to point B, and you hire contractors and you hire machinery, and so you know how much it costs. So by reducing the time and the duration of the move, basically you make hard money for the company, which affects the bottom line, right? So easy as that. But some projects don't end up with money savings. So you make some, like you have a process and you have a department and they spend a lot of time doing some activities and they end up non-value adding, and you work on the process, get it streamlined, and instead of hours they spend minutes. So they have their time freed up, right? So you can't calculate it, so it doesn't affect the bottom line right away.
Right.
They have time available now to do some productive work,
Right.
something for the company. But how do you calculate it? It's a long run. So you can say, well, we did it, and we can predict that Paul and Yuri and somebody else will do some job. We can't calculate anyway.
Right.
So this has to be a factor. So somebody needs to be thinking holistically,
Right.
because it's what we are doing here. You're building organizational capability.
Right.
Well, in the long run, so you have some hard benefits. Absolutely, we are gonna have hard benefits. No problem with that. But please think about organizational capability. Think about organizational learning. So
Yeah.
it's a lot more even important in many cases.
No, the catchphrase, people are your most important assets, very few people actually do something about that, but monetizing that is what organizations are all about, right? No one ever
Yeah.
said, I mean, some people have said incorrectly, like, the reason we're successful is because we make things better than other people and our machinery. Well, the reality is it's the people behind it. It's also the process behind it. And those things last. I was reading a book a while ago. It's maybe Noah Yuval Harari. I think it was 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, and fascinating insights. And one of the things he said, for example, I think he was using Peugeot as an example. He said if all of the Peugeot factories in the world burnt down, would there be a Peugeot? So the answer is yes, because there's a brand, and you could rebuild it. You can borrow money to build it again, and it's the intellectual capital that remains, and it's the intellectual capital that you've built, which most people don't know how. I mean, I think I shouldn't say most people. We don't really quantify in accurate ways. I mean,
No.
it's what the education business is all about: improving human capital, intellectual capital. We all know that. That's one of the most important things in our own lives, right? Learning, growing, developing. But when it comes to organizations, both at a micro level, which is what you talked about, but at a macro level, and you're dealing with organizations. Most of our clients are very big organizations, and that
Exactly.
they have PMOs, they have project management offices, but also that is kind of a. What's your experience? I mean, I didn't plan on talking about this much. What's your experience where these PMOs become? Do they become like what's it called? Pinch points? Do they become bottlenecks? Where the idea is that they'll provide the consistency and the translation that you talked about from the top all the way down and up and down the ranks and across the organization. Are they effective, and can they be done better?
By PMOs, what do you mean, please?
The project management
Iterate.
offices, the program management offices that are really,
Okay.
often at some big organizations, pulled in to centralize the many projects and the many programs. Because sometimes I think of them more as a budget center a lot of the people there are really budget oriented and saying, kind of just contrary to what you've just pointed out. They're saying, well,
Yeah.
we've got to cut money here because it's not producing results. But in fact, it would be wise if they were really thinking of the human capability and the benefits on that side, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's exactly what I was thinking about, at least. So when I said translators, so we need people who are there for long run, and we need to people, whatever you call them, PMO, or anything else, so who think holistically, who understand the nuances of different methodologies, who need to understand how their synergies, who don't jump from one method to another, and kind of see how they work together for the common objectives, and who can understand their positive effect of their implementation of any program, including their organizational capability, including their organizational learning. So they can quantify, they can see it holistically. And the thing is for long runs. What I tried, don't. I want to emphasize the thing over long run. So sometimes people change. It's just there's no continuity, and there's nobody thinking holistically about these things we're talking about and the organizational capability and
Right.
long run deployment, long
What's
run benefits.
Do you have favorite tools for Lean? I mean, and Six Sigma, Lean Sigma. Do you have any specific tools that you like to use in the process improvement? I mean, obviously, one tool in the Agile world is Kanban and sprints. What kind of other tools? Obviously, there's so many different methods for getting organizations to be more effective at a project level and at a program level. And you can speak to each level, whatever level you prefer to
Okay.
talk about.
Well, at the project level, I would let me single out two things.
Sure.
So one is process mapping. That's absolutely. So I would think over 90% of projects would have process mapping.
Mm-hmm.
It's where people try to make a snapshot of what they're doing. Usually we use something like a swim lane diagram. So you have different departments, it's cross-functional team, and they start arguing about how they really process it. And then it goes through transformation. It's not, you start with this. As I said, profound knowledge at least at this level. So you understand how process runs, where you have rework, where just defects basically happen, and there are defects not only in the physical sense, but also in transactional, informational sense. And then this map kind of moves through the structures, through the phases of the make, through the phases of Lean Sigma. So then you analyze it. You kind of think, well, where it's logical, whether you need to change steps, where some steps are non-value adding. So there's probably most of the projects we had, so there's so many approvals, most processes we had, so we removed a lot of approvals because they're non-value adding. Because we ask question to somebody who wants to approve and creates a bottleneck. So what they actually do, and it's usually very nominal. So it's non-value adding. So they don't really check. Anyways, just to get a picture. So you analyze the map, then you create a future state map. So it's basically how your process is going to run in the future. So this is one of the most important tools and very effective tool. And the second one is root cause analysis. We usually use their white tree method. And it's also very interesting, analytical, so you have people thinking in terms of cause and effect.
Mm-hmm.
So going down different levels to get to the root causes. And so again, it's very effective, and of course it's not like one day exercise. So
Right.
you brainstorm different branches, and sometimes it's because it's a structural brainstorming, you have to validate. So
Right.
it's allowed to say anything, but at some point, well, you either validate it and we'll say it's not relevant, but it's part of the trick, part of the exercise, basically. So I think these two are the most common and the most successful tools I've been using.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously many people who have come out of the world of software or immersed in it don't think of Lean, at least that I'm aware of, and in fact that is vital and integral to everything that makes software work, right? And root cause analysis is obviously something that people and software engineers do, but But if you take it from a process improvement point of view, and as you said, what is the process specifically? Often things get so complex that trying to unscrambling it. But so early in the process, you probably want to map that out, and then continue mapping it on a regular basis.
Yeah, and statistics come, like as I said, like a cherry on the cake, right? That's what they say in English. So statistics comes last. Sometimes people get fascinated about statistical tools, but what actually happens, like you start always with a brainstorming, structural brainstorming, like I mentioned. But then when you validate things, then you apply statistics. So it's basically enhancement rather than their solution itself. But again, it's a wealth of Lean Six Sigma. So it applies both quality and statistical tools, so they work together perfectly. So it's just a win-win marriage. Happy marriage, let's put it this way.
Yeah, and these are not things that, it seems like these are not things that are going away anytime soon and becoming more complicated. But, I think it's been really fascinating to talk to you. And obviously, this is an area that you've lived and breathed for many years. And hopefully we'll be teaching more on our platform and talking about this and applying it in projects. So people you can sort of take away real examples of here we are, here's what we're doing, here's how we can improve it. And with that, Yuri, I really appreciate your time. Again, thanks for stepping out of the process and to tell us all about it.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you, Paul, for having me.